Hello and welcome back to Woodcrafter's Corner, where we talk about all things woodcrafting, but not a lot about corners. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different and just talk about what it takes to get into whittling as a hobby. A lot of my videos on this channel talk about kind of some higher mid-range knives and equipment that might be a little cost prohibitive for a lot of people, which is totally understandable. It's fun to review those, and I personally enjoy using tools like that, but not everybody needs to have this kind of cost threshold as a barrier to get into whittling as a hobby. In fact, whittling, wood carving is probably one of the cheapest and most budget-friendly hobbies that you can get into. So I wanted to kind of clear that up a little bit because while I do enjoy some of the higher end tools, and they're certainly wonderful to have, you don't need them in order to start whittling and just start enjoying yourself. So what do you need? Well, to be honest with you, all you need is a piece of wood and a knife. And that's pretty much it. You can be as creative as you want. You don't need necessarily like a how-to guide, although those are also really helpful, and I do a lot of those on this channel. But it's not something that you absolutely need. So what do you need? Let's get back to that. So you can walk outside and you can find a stick. If you have a pocket knife lying around, that's good enough. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of the pocket knives I have lying around, or ones I might get very cheaply at like a pawn shop or a garage sale or something like that, are not necessarily the sharpest or perhaps most suited to wood carving or whittling in general, because whatever reason the knife shape just doesn't lend itself well. Or perhaps you want something a little bit smaller and you have a bigger one, whatever the case is. Sometimes something you have isn't necessarily ideal, but if it's something that you do have and you like it, well, you don't have to purchase anything else. But if you don't have a knife, or if you're wanting something a little more specialized but are looking to kind of stay under a certain budget, you can get something like this. Now, this is not a knife, this is a box, but inside is a knife. And this is a Schrade Imperial, and I got this on Amazon for less than $10. It's very inexpensive. And what does it have? Well, let me tell you. It's got 3 blades. We got 1, 2, and this is a brand new knife, so I have not broken it in, so the blades are a little bit difficult to get out. But then there's the 3rd one. So in whittling terms, if you were to go out and buy these knives separately, in my opinion, you have a roughing blade here, and then you have something more of a detail knife. This one could be considered a detail knife as well, but it's got kind of this curved edge to it. I don't know if you can see that. But I personally, I've used it, but it is still very new. This one right here, I haven't used that much because I don't necessarily like the curved blade. In fact, the Swiss Army knife has a curved blade too, and I actually did a whole video about adapting it to be more like this one, which was more of a straight edge. These two though, even if we just had these two work really well for wood carving. Now again, this knife costs less than $10. It doesn't have a locking mechanism. I mean, it's high quality, but I don't necessarily see it lasting forever. But that's fine, because if you take good care of it, I'm sure that it will last you long enough. So let's get into a little more detail on this knife in particular, just because I think that it's a great value. What you get, it works beautifully. It's got great reviews. I personally like it. I think it could come a little bit sharper, so that is one downside. And that is that if you want to get this whittling sharp, you're probably going to need to have a little bit of a skill, either with a whetstone or a strop. Mine came dull enough that I did decide that a strop wasn't enough. I went ahead and sharpened it on this whetstone here, and that one fixed it right up. And then I did hone it on the leather strop. Once I did that, as you can see, it cuts through really well. It handles really well. And it's perfect for throwing it in your pocket and just taking it with you wherever you go. Whenever the mood strikes, you'll be able to just whip that knife right out and start a whittling, which is the dream we all have, I'm sure. So, this knife, very inexpensive, the perfect entry-level knife as far as I'm concerned. And you can also test and see if whittling is a hobby for you without spending, $60, $70 on a whittling set. Although those are really, really nice, I'm just saying they're not necessary. Now, what about wood? Well, again, you can walk outside and just pick up any old stick and start whittling. Some wood is softer than others and easier to carve. So besides having your knife really sharp, in order for you to really enjoy the hobby, in my opinion, you need a decently soft wood to use. So while you can use any old stick that you find lying around, some of them, like if you happen to pick up a piece of oak or something like that, is going to be quite a bit more difficult than if you go out and maybe do like a cottonwood or something like that, cedar maybe. So keep that in mind. But if you want, you can get some specialized pre-cut out pieces of wood. Most people do basswood, myself included, for their whittling projects, and it's relatively inexpensive to just get a few blocks that make it way easier to whittle and just practice. So here's what I've got. Now this I ordered, I haven't even opened it yet, but I've ordered many times from this seller on eBay. I'll leave a link in the description. It's cheaper than going on Amazon because, I don't know, I guess somebody just has a wood shop and just sells these. So if the link I leave in the description no longer goes anywhere, like if that seller stops, you can find dozens of options on eBay. But I'll show you what you get here. So we get quite a few blanks just like this, which is perfect for small projects. And a great way to start is like a gnome or a wood spirit. And these are perfect for that because the long corners here give you a way to practice faces much easier than carving into just a piece of like a branch or something. So this comes with quite a few. And then it also has a couple of blocks of this size, which are great. You can cut them in half, or you can just make a bigger project. So it comes with 2 of these, and then it comes with, let's see, 8 of these smaller ones. So this will keep it going for a good long time. Plenty of ways to practice, and honestly, it only takes a few blocks to practice on before you start really getting the hang of it. And so the bang for your buck that you get with these is good. I think these cost me between $12 and $15 for all of this, which isn't bad for basswood at all. So to recap, what do you need to get started? Well, in my opinion, if you have nothing, you're just starting from scratch, if you don't have a knife lying around and you want a good recommendation for one, I'd go with this Imperial knife on Amazon, and I go with just a few blocks of this. It makes it way easier to learn. And even if your knife is dull, like this one is, it's not dull, but it's not sharp in my opinion, it still makes it relatively easy to cut through. And honestly, it's just a better experience. And I think the number one thing that turns people away from whittling or wood carving as a hobby is not having a sharp enough knife and starting out with wood that's a little too hard, because if you do that, it just seems a lot harder than it really should be. So a lot more difficult. So make it easy on yourself. Start with something easy. And I think you'll find that whittling is a fantastic and rewarding hobby. And as you can see, even just some cheap tools like this, and by cheap I just mean inexpensive. This Imperial knife is a really high quality, at least for the price. I've been pretty impressed with it. And the wood, well, you can't really do much better than this anyway, so it's the perfect way to buy it as far as I'm concerned. Now, one other thing you might need is a leather strop like this one. Now again, I do think that a whetstone is a good investment, but those generally will run you about $20 to $30, at least the way I bought mine. You can definitely buy cheaper ones, very inexpensive ones, and you can get ones that they use for kitchen knives or whatever. You can use any sharpening tool. I've just found the one like this one to be a little bit easier. And the strop, you can actually just use an old piece of leather. If you have a genuine leather belt, that would work. But you can also buy one of these strops on Amazon, very inexpensive once again. So all in, how much would it cost you to get started with the tools I mentioned today? Because again, you can just go down to a pawn shop, pick up a knife, not worry about necessarily sharpening it so much. Especially if you wanted to just run down a Walmart or something or a hardware store and just get a cheap whetstone just to keep it honed, which is totally fine. But if you wanted to use the tools I recommended here for starting out, we have the Imperial blade, we have a load of basswood here, which I again highly recommend, and then of course the leather strop and honing compound. So all in, knife less than $10, the chunks of wood here less than $15, and the honing compound and strop, which I'll leave a link to the description, is less than $10 as well. So you could potentially be in this for around $30 or so, depending on price fluctuations and whatnot. But that's pretty good. And the knife is going to last you a good long time, especially if you take care of it and run it across the strop and just keep up with sharpening, which you will have to do a little bit more often than maybe a more premium carving knife like Flex Cut or OCC Tools or whatever. Those use a higher quality steel, so they tend to hold their edge longer. But for the price, I mean, this is still pretty good. And then as far as the basswood goes, it's going to last you a long time before you go through all these, especially as a beginner. And you can use different sections of it for practicing faces. That's what I've always done, practicing your cuts and stuff like that. So this will last you a while, and by the time you need to get another one, you'll have the hang of it. So all in, yeah, around 30 bucks. That's not bad at all to start your hobby off. Of course, you could always start with something a little more premium if you want. A step up from this would be like the Beaver Craft set, which I started with, and I think that it's a very high quality for the money. That one's are between $30 and $40 or so, also on Amazon. So that one will bump up the price, but it comes with the strop and it comes with the honing compound and 3 knives. So it eliminates the cost of the strop and honing compound if you needed to buy that anyway. So, but for a beginner, this is perfect. You don't need the strop. You don't need to go out and buy wood either. I would say the only thing if you don't have that you need is the knife, and something like this, very inexpensive. So between $10 if you just went with the knife and $30 if you wanted to get everything together. That's not bad at all. The important thing is that you just get out there and you start whittling, because it is a very rewarding hobby and it's a ton of fun. And you know, you're left with something that you can show for it. You can see your skills improve over time. Even with just one batch of blanks, you'll see a big difference between your first one and the last one in there. Plus, you can give these out as gifts, put them on your counter as mementos. You could even carve a spoon if you want and eat out of it, which is utility at its best. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. And be sure to stay tuned next week when we go over something else entirely. Thanks for watching.